Hello, friends. Welcome to the ATC Double Cut. A special guest is joining me today. It's Joe Gulotti, the Talking Greenkeeper. Hello, Joe.
Micah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. And if you're back, that kind of means one thing. It's time for us to go over the bombs, the posts that didn't do so well.
Yeah, the bombs. The post didn't do too well. I'm shocked by the list and what people aren't willing to read. It's kind of, it, it disappoints me that
No, it's
people. Some of them are kind of obvious, but some of them are very just. What's the emoji? It's that. It's kind of question. I just question why people wouldn't want to take 2 minutes to go ahead and read over a blog.
well, I have a couple speculations about that. When you have a list of I don't know exactly how many blog posts I did last year, 65 or 70 or something. Some of them have to finish with more views and some of them have to finish at the bottom. So it's a fact of life, and it's like a law of nature, that a law of mathematics, that it has to work out like that, right? So,
Yeah.
and because all of the stuff I write is so good, then some of the stuff that doesn't get a lot of views must be good too. that's
Yes,
that's one way to look at it.
I think so too. I think that, and I think I've said this before on the Bomb podcast, is when I do podcasts that I think are going to be excellent and that I think are going to have a lot of listens, and they don't. For example, I did one recently that I thought was going to get a lot of listens, and this person, it didn't. It just did not. People aren't interested in listening to it, and I feel that it's one of the best podcasts that I've ever done since I've been doing the podcast. It was one that I prepared really hard for. It was one that I took probably the most seriously out of any podcast that I've ever done, just out of mad respect for the guests that I was having on. And it doesn't have the listens that said your podcast, the annual holiday extravaganza with Michael Woods, which is close to 1,000 listens by now.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, that was a good one, and I wanted to
it
say
really
thank
was.
you for asking such good questions, and
Thank you. You're
I was
welcome.
in good form to be able to answer those. So we got to talk a lot about the general philosophy of greenkeeping and turfgrass maintenance, and some really innovative new stuff that a lot of people are getting great results with. So that was a good one. If anybody hasn't, I'll put a direct link to that in the show notes, Joe, so that people can listen to that holiday extravaganza if they'd like to.
Or whatever it was called, the annual holiday special. I gave it a different name this year. Uh, it was, I think, the Micah. I wanted to put your name first because when in my car, Micah,
Hmm.
I have a Honda Ridgeline, and on Hondas, the full title of a podcast, if it's a 2019, I have a 2000, it doesn't show up. So I wanted to have your name first. And if you ever notice when you listen to a podcast on Apple, the title will scroll across the screen. So I didn't want to put the annual holiday episode with the annual holiday special with Michael Woods. I made sure your name was first, the Michael Woods annual holiday special. That's how I titled it. And honestly, Mike, it was one of my favorite episodes that I've ever done. I thought just the the content that we talked about, the conversation that we had, the flow of it, the energy, the how at the end we kind of just went off, and I've listened to it 3 or 4 times since it's been published right before Christmas, and it's probably the episode I'm most proud of. I think it was a really just excellent episode, and if you haven't listened yet, which I'm sure most of the people that are watching this or listening to this podcast, they probably listen to it. But if there's somebody out there that hasn't listened to that podcast episode yet, I highly recommend it. It was, I don't know, pinnacle Talking Greenkeeper.
It was a fun one, and I I think I think as far as the views go, and you mentioned the episode that you really prepared for, and you thought like you had such respect for the guests, and you thought like a lot of people would want to listen. I find that we end up attracting a certain core audience, and like for me, I for example, I have a lot of people that follow me that like to read, because I've been writing my blog since 2009, so that's 15 years now that I've been writing what was the Viridescent blog, and now I just call it like the ATC blog. So I've got well over 1,000 posts that I've written, and I write magazine articles, and I write various things, and I send out email newsletters. And when I send out an email newsletter, it's not by my choice that I can track the clicks, because I used to just want to send out an email just to all my friends without any of this tracking shit in there. But then they force you, so you don't get flagged as a spam sender, to use some kind of service, and these services show which links get clicked. So, for example, I recently sent out my ATC update to over 1,000 email addresses for people that subscribe to that email newsletter. So I sent out that ATC update just 3 days ago or something, and I can see which links that I put in that email newsletter got clicked on. And they're not, people don't click on the videos, they don't click on the podcasts, they click on things that they can read, and they click through to some of the top blog posts. And I've noticed it's interesting how people click on the top blog posts. So I think, like, for me, a lot of the people that are obviously, they're reading a newsletter and then they want to read something else. And that's and also people like the technical stuff. They tend not to like my golfing stories or something, but if it's something that they think is practically useful for them, they'll click on it. Like last week, I wrote a new blog post about sand top dressing amounts. 2 ways to figure out good sand top dressing amounts. One is using a resource from Paste Turf, their growth potential and top dressing spreadsheet, which you can find at pasteturf.org. And that's one way to do it, based on your site temperatures. And another way to do it is based on OM246 test results. So you check how OM246, total organic material, changes over time, and you can calculate based on what your target organic matter content is in the soil, how much sand you would need to apply. So that's very practical, and that kind of thing gets a lot of clicks. A lot of people will want it. And so what I've come to realize is my audience tends to like technical things, things that they can use, and they're not so concerned with my literary output. If I'm saying I took a golfing holiday to this exotic island in Japan and played a golf course that no one knows of, and it's not even on a map, and I'll be like, this is the most amazing story. You know, I went with Andrew Thompson, the son of Peter Thompson, the Australian sporting legend, and like just, playing with hickory clubs at this famous, I'm playing, to me, it's kind of famous because it's so hidden and secret.
Yeah, I caught it. I caught what I can't say it. My Japanese is terrible. What part of Japan is that? That story.
Well,
I know that story. I love it.
That one it's in the Goto Islands, and there's a couple golf courses that you don't find on a map, and so that it's.
But I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying about that story with Andrew Thompson is so interesting to you, and you think it's this great, interesting, and it's interesting to me because that's what I like. I like stories like that, and it's the same thing, Michael, with the podcast. Everybody likes when you're on. Everybody likes when Chris Trittaba's on. Listen, Matt Schaefer, who I just had on, is almost near 500 listens, and it hasn't even been 7 days yet, and that's. People are interested in that. Steve Rabideau, that one got a lot of listens. The big names, they get the listens because people they're recognizable in our industry, and people want to hear them talk about how they approach greenkeeping, just in the same way when Micah Woods is posting something that's technical, they're going to read it, because what you post technically is usually good information that we can use to make us be better greenkeepers.
Well, I think that's a perfect time for us to segue into this list of the bombs, Joe. So we've done this for a couple of years now,
Yeah.
and so the idea with the ATC double cut is to talk about, to give a second treatment, a second cut, a extra discussion of something that I've written about on the blog, and I've got this post that I do every year, 10 posts no one read last year. So I look at how many people or how many page views there were, how many reads, how many times people went to this page for each of the blog posts that I posted during the calendar year. So this was from all the posts in 2023, and these ones got the fewest views. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to talk with you? And so we did this a couple of years ago because you like some of these. Remember, there was that one about the grass on the streetcar lines in
Oh my
Kumamoto,
gosh,
Japan.
so good. That was a great one. I loved it. Yeah.
And then there's these trains that have real mowers on them. Like,
Yeah.
that's got to be the most
Insane.
expensive mower in the world. And it just cuts with a real mower. The train drives, and it's awesome. So I embedded those kind of videos in there and stuff. And to me, that's fascinating. And just like it didn't get any reads. So I thought, if I can talk with somebody that can also give some input on this, we can have a conversation about it. So we kind of make it a tradition. I think this is the third year that
Third year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Third year. And it's right around our birthday. We'll be both celebrating a birthday on the 29th of January. For those of you that don't know, Mike and I have the same birthday.
Yeah, and now the whole world knows it, Joe. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we have the same birthday, and that is a nice connection between us, two of the most successful podcasters in this industry.
There you go.
So,
It must be something about that day. But go ahead. Let's get it with these Temp Posts.
yeah, so the Temp Post no one read last year, and I posted this on the 1st of January, and these get like 10 times fewer views than the top post. So I put a link in there to the post that shared the top 10 posts, and the average post, the median post in the top 10 list, got 725 views during 2023. But the median post on this list only got 76. And that's just page views. And you figure that's not all 76 people that went to that page actually read all the way through the post. So basically, we can just say nobody read it. Now, of course, Joe, you get my email newsletter with the full text of each blog. So a lot of people read the blog in an email format, and they don't actually have to go through to the website. So it gets a lot considerably more than what these numbers are. But this is just like how many people visited the webpage. So
I usually click on the link for your reference. Whenever I get that email, I click on the link and go to the website.
And I recommend that, and I appreciate that. And the reason why I recommend it is because the formatting and the images and the charts and any equations and stuff like that, not like I put a lot of equations in my blog posts, but sometimes I do, and they format properly on the website. They don't always format properly, and the pictures don't look as good. The pictures don't expand to such a large size in the email. So if you really want to see the full content, you want to go to the go through to the website.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do for sure. Yeah.
How many? I wonder how many new people we can get to sign up for that ATC blog post by email newsletter.
I hope we can get. Yeah, I hope we can get. I don't know what would be a good number. 20, 30.
Ooh, 20 would
20
be
aggressive.
right now it's like there's like 665 people, something like that, who
Let
are
me
subscribed to that list.
let me ask you this, Micah. Do you still? Oh, which is one of my things that I wrote down because during the Clay Payne interview, I think I started off every question with that. Let me ask you this, and I felt like that it was very annoying tick. So let me ask you this: do you still get emails from people saying they just discovered you?
Um, I don't get a lot. No.
Okay.
But yeah, every now and then, every now and then.
Yeah, me too. I'm getting a few. I just got one maybe a couple weeks ago. I still get the occasional, oh my gosh, I just found your podcast. It is awesome. Can you send me a sticker? I get those every once in a while. I got one of those recently. It was really cool. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And
yeah.
that's how you contacted me. I think we've told this story before. I got an email out of
Yeah.
the blue, and I thought it's a joke, or like somebody's trying to spam me or something, and you're like, I'm a greenkeeper in Delaware. I just read your book, A Short Grammar of Greenkeeping. It's amazing, or something. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
totally.
nobody ever tells me that. So that was a nice introduction. And I'm like,
Awesome. Yeah, it
oh,
was good.
oh, he's serious. He's being honest. That was pretty cool.
He's just not fucking with me. No, that's
Yeah,
awesome. No, that was cool. That was quite some time ago. That was
20.
2016, 2017.
Yeah, something like that. But
Yeah,
that was sort of like I've just discovered you,
it
and
was. I had no idea about MLSN or any of that. And listen, the Turfgrass Zealot, Dave Wilbur, his podcast
mhm.
was where I first heard you. So, and it's all, I mean, I'll probably tell the story again. It's so funny. I'm going to interview for a job. I call Armen Sunni
Oh,
because
this story again?
yeah, so like I call Armen Sunni. No, 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 this is different. So I call Armen Sunni and I say, "Hey, I'm going to interview for this job. I know you interview with people. Can you give me some tips for how to do a good interview?" And he was nice enough to give me some nice tips. But he said, "Listen, I just did a podcast with Dave Wilbur called The Turfgrass Zealot on TurfNet. Go listen to that. I just did a whole episode on it, so go listen to that." And I did because I was listening to podcasts then a lot, and then I was like, this is really good. So I found you and I then the frankly speaking and listened to all these people that I had never heard, all these voices and these messages I've never heard before, and learned about MLSN from ironically you, who I found out about you from Armen Sunni of all people in a non-direct way. It's kind of
Oh,
crazy. And
now
then
that's a nice story.
yeah, so I don't know if I've ever told that. I probably have told that story, but yeah, it was just like it's kind of funny. The reason that I know about MLSN is from the person who thinks it's fucking beat is Armen Sunni. It's great.
Yeah, I don't know how some people figure the math of fertilizer.
I
Because
don't know, man. They
the
make it
grass
so complicated.
it's like I really enjoyed the Matt Schaefer episode, and I hope a lot of people will listen because they can find out that there's a big difference between the way Matt Schaefer thinks about turfgrass management and the way that I think about turfgrass management. And of course, there's a lot of different ways to get results, and Matt pointed that out. And if somebody's getting results, that's fine. You don't have to get results my way. You can get results in a lot of different ways. But man, that whole balancing the soil and thinking micronutrients are important and stuff, it kind of goes against. It's like the exact opposite of the way I think. And to me, it's just like, man, that makes it complicated. And it's sort of like, to me, that kind of thing of trying to balance the soil, it means you're adding a lot of things that are not staying in the soil. And so if you do the math on it, you realize you're wasting that product. And I think people that really get into that is like, I feel like they're not doing the math because they don't realize that they're wasting the product. And of course, then they get results because you're doing a lot of other things like rolling, irrigating properly, applying pesticides very carefully and only at the right time. And you got really highly trained staff operating equipment well. You're doing all kinds of things. And by the way, you're also wasting all this fertilizer that you're putting out. And then the grass gets better. And then you say, oh, it's because we're balancing the soil. That's a big part of the program. I would say, no, you're wasting the product and you're getting good results because you're irrigating properly and you're applying pesticides properly and your mowers are set properly and you're rolling and your staff are working very well.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And he said at the beginning, he said when we were at Augusta, we noticed that potash didn't stay present in the soil for that long of a time. He said that at the beginning of the podcast, and then he goes on and said we balance the soil to the boron percentage or whatever. He made some reference to boron. And listen, I pushed back a little bit, and I wanted to be polite because, yeah, there are many ways to get to a final result. But I'm getting kind of tired of that answer. That's anytime I push back, that's the answer I get. It's anytime I question anything, I get the idiom of, oh, there's many ways to skin a cat. And it's just like after 4 years or no, 7 years, my fault, of doing MLSN. God, talk about math, Micah. Sorry, my bad. It's just, listen, I get good results. The results I get are phenomenal from implementing MLSN, from going with limited N, applying urea as my nitrogen source, ammonium sulfate, just using those two sources as my nitrogen source, not using a designer spoon feeding program. And during the interview, these are the things that I'm thinking about, and I'm trying to figure out a way to sort of push back in a way that's not going to make him feel uncomfortable or make myself feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to be rude because he is my guest. He's taking time out of his busy day to talk to an idiot jerk like me. I don't want to piss him off. But at the same time, I was getting agitated because he's saying that he's a minimalist greenkeeper, but yet you're sand capping your fairways, you're using all these nutrients, you're putting all this energy into balancing the soil. I just wanted to tell him that to me that just doesn't sound too like it's a minimalist approach. And then it got me thinking even more of, listen, gosh, I feel like I could go to Marion tomorrow, Micah, and I could be the golf course superintendent at Marion and implement the program, implement a true minimalist program, whatever you want to call it. I could implement, let's go this, the grammar of greenkeeping mindset to Marion and be fucking highly successful. And that's what it's all about. And so, you know what? Yeah, there's a million ways to do it, but guess what? I'm going to go to Marion and I'm going to implement the grammar of greenkeeping mindset, and I'm going to get fantastic results. And we're going to put that money into the people. We're going to put that money into all these other things that we'd rather put the money to instead of trying to balance the soil. But unfortunately, I'm going to be 52 on Monday, and not too many high-end places are looking to hire somebody in their 50s, but it really got me going. It really got me thinking about that and just saying, you know what, like, no, I could go to Marion, I could go to Cricket Club, I could go to Pine Valley, and I could have success with the grammar of greenkeeping mindset.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. But it's when people like Matt Schaefer retire and a younger generation can take over, and then eventually things change. But you can tell from listening to that episode, it sounded to me like not a lot of people really question Matt a lot, and maybe he just gets. You could tell that. I don't know that he's really thought through all of those things that about the fertilizer so much, because it sounded like he hadn't really heard a lot of counter arguments to what he was saying. And I guess people just respect him so much because he's been so successful that maybe they don't question him so much. And I think it's the same way with professors. And there's that famous quote from some scientist, not in the turfgrass field, but they said that science advances one funeral at a time. Because what happens is you get these famous scientists and everybody respects their ideas, and then they are very invested in their ideas, and so they tend to say gravity works this way, fertilizer works this way, green speed works this way, dollar spot works this way, salinity management works this way. So you get the people that are very well respected, and they get to a position of power and authority, and those ideas then persist as long as that person's alive. But after they die, then you can get some change. And so whether it's retire or that quote about science advances one funeral at a time, there's something to that. And so you're mentioning, you're going to be 52 years old. I'm getting up to approaching 50 also. And I think what happens is if these ideas are good about the grammar of greenkeeping, it's the younger generation that can go implement them and improve it and make it work. So I do have some optimism.
I do too, for sure.
I have an expectation that this stuff will get used all over the world. It already is getting used all over the world. And sometimes then there's just like a reminder that it's not quite as widespread as I would have thought. I'll mention one more thing, and then we will get into these posts. Chad Allen, who is in Indiana at Chatham Hills, he's the golf course superintendent there. He went to Penn State, and he contacted me a few years ago, and he said, yeah, he just kind of discovered MLSN and this stuff. He didn't learn about it at Penn State, and he was pretty excited to know that there was all this information that I was putting out. And he just won the Kaminsky Award for social media leadership. So congratulations, Chad.
Yeah, way to go, Chad. The Kaminsky Award. And listen, I love Penn State. Ben McGraw is one of my favorite people. I love him. Kaminsky, for all his idiosyncrasies and just his weirdness, there's something about him that's very likable. And the people that have graduated from Penn State. Listen, I'm a Rutgers graduate, and there's that rivalry there. But listen, I don't even care because I dig the whole Penn State scene. It's a good scene.
Yeah, it's a great turfgrass program, but sometimes they're going to teach what's in the textbook and not necessarily the fact that I am in Thailand and I don't work for a university kind of makes my ideas not quite as mainstream, and so that's just the way it is. Well, speaking of not mainstream, let's see what was actually in these blog posts, Joe.
All right, cool.
Number 10. This is a nice one. Here they are, counting down from number 10 to the post with the fewest views in 2023. Number 10 was Shade Effective Clouds, looks at the reduction in photosynthetically active radiation on a June day with 0 hours of sunshine, and also links to 2 web apps that can find PPFD and DLI for any location in the world. This one is, I don't know, maybe it's too technical.
It was really simple. Okay, so it was simple. So I calculated my DLI today, Micah, for Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah.
On January 27th, 2024, with no clouds, the DLI today would have been 25.7.
Yeah, that's higher than I would have thought. I would have guessed at like 18, but I trust that app. So you went to the app and calculated it?
Yeah, I went to the app. Yeah, it was so simple.
It's so simple. All you have to do is put your latitude and the day of the year, and it's going to tell you, I think.
Oh, so you went to that baseball game, right? Well, go ahead. We'll do that. And I want to get back. I have a comment about that baseball stadium.
Well, let me see. Is this showing on the screen, the PPFD calculator?
Yeah. So I actually have the longitude and the
Yeah.
and the latitude available if you want to punch it in.
All right. So what's your latitude?
39.7876.
Point. Well, how about
Seven,
just
7876.
7.6?
Yeah.
And what's your longitude?
75, 69, 66.
Say that again.
75. Hold on, I might have it might be no, 69, 66.
75,
Point
69.
69, 66. Yeah.
So 69, 66. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, DLI 26. Oh, I need to do negative here. Yeah.
Okay, maybe
There we
that's
go.
why I didn't. Okay.
It's 26. I get 26.
All
Did
right,
you
what did I
adjust any
got? I got
settings?
25.7. So maybe it just changed. I don't know. That's pretty close, right?
Oh, it would just change by the latitude. Because if I'm changing the latitude,
Uh huh.
it changes it. But yeah, so that's really useful if you have a sunny day. So
Yeah, and it was sunny today. It was pretty nice.
and so I calculated this for Tokyo because it was really cloudy, and I know in Florida it's been really cloudy lately, and they've been talking a lot about their DLI suppression and or reduction from what it would normally. So I mean, it's interesting to know that those apps are out there, and that I think it's interesting to know that those apps are available to make these calculations.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, really simple. Really simple. It took me how long did it take us to do that? I mean, it would have been way quicker had I not been reciting you the numbers of the longitude and latitude. But let's get back to that baseball field real quick, Micah. So I'm looking. Can you scroll up to the baseball field picture?
I can. So everybody, if you're watching this, then you can see it, and if you
Well, here I'll
if
describe it if you're
if
listening.
if you're listening, there's going to be a link to the video in the show notes, so you can check it out. All
All
right,
right, so you're at the what's it called? The Mackay? How do you pronounce the name of that stadium?
Meiji Jingu Stadium. Babe Ruth played there.
Meiji Jing Stadium. So, Micah, I was a catcher. I
Okay.
played baseball from the time I was 8 years old until I was 19. Every summer, played baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that area between home plate and the backstop is scaring the shit out of me. Look at the distance on that. If you have a pass ball and there's a run on third base, you're fucked.
I think there's a lot of room there. It might be because of my the the angle of the camera lens or something. But yeah,
No, there's a
I mean,
lot of room there. I
I
mean,
think
just
there's
look
some
at the,
space.
yeah. So for every, I would say there's probably that's a good 20 yards, I would say. I would say that's a good 20 yards, which is a lot. That's a big gap. I mean, great for foul balls if you're a catcher and somebody pops up and you got to throw the mask out of the way and go get that catcher, you do the basket catch when you're a catcher for foul balls behind home plate because they get that weird backspin on it. But dude, like if there's a runner on third and I got a pitcher who's a little wild, man, I'm not liking that. I'm not liking that area between home plate and the backstop, dude. A lot of area there.
Well, that's I don't imagine at your age you play catcher anymore.
No, not catching, not playing catcher anymore. But anyway,
But
I
those
when
are
I
some sweet clouds, aren't they?
they are. I mean, great day. Like, yeah, excellent, excellent. And listen, good blog, good information. What a good app to use.
Well, great. Well, so that is pretty useful, and it's like, yeah, I can understand. Like light is not so exciting, and PAR, PPFD, DLI, those kind of abbreviations or initialisms are can be a little bit intimidating, and sometimes the units of photosynthetic light are not so exciting to deal with. But I just think this is something that if you're a professional turfgrass manager, it's useful to be able to quantify the shade, quantify the photosynthetically active radiation, so you can make better arguments about uh, adjustments to maintenance practices or adjustments to the shade itself.
I agree. It's a good blog.
Number 9, converting between soil test extraction methods shares another reference for how to do this for Midwestern soils. And this particular blog post is something that you asked earlier if I get many people emailing asking or letting me know that they've just found out about me or just discovered my YouTube channel or podcast or website or whatever. And I don't get a lot of those. I get many more emails saying, I've got a soil test result with this extractant. How can I relate it to Malic 3? I've got soil test results, but they're not by this. Can I still use MLSN? I get a lot of questions like that. And there are all kinds of ways to convert. I put that in the MLSN cheat sheet, which is easy to find on the ATC website. And there's a lot of research about this because this is common. There's different soil test extractants used all over the world. Within the United States, there are all kinds of different extractants used. I can send a sample to Brookside Labs and get it tested for potassium probably in 5 to 10 different ways. I could get it tested for phosphorus in 5 to 10 different ways. So there are a lot of options, and it's useful to be able to know when you can convert, when you can't convert, and if you are going to convert, what the conversion factors are. So I like to share that kind of stuff that I can always refer to when people ask me those questions next time. I can just say, hey, I've got a blog post about it. Check this out. This might be applicable for you.
I remember when I heard Dave Wilbur's podcast about MLSN and was so intrigued by it that I said, hey, I need to start implementing this. That the first year I was at Newark Country Club, the soil reports were done in pounds per acre, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was and I had to convert pounds per acre to parts per million to understand the MLSN guidelines and where all the nutrients were in relation to the MLSN guidelines. And I remember thinking, oh, I'll email Micah maybe and ask him, but I just Googled it and it came up with the equation. I forget what it is off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's in that blog, how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was simple. It was really, really simple. And it was a nice little winter project. I remember converting all the soil tests from parts per or pounds per acre to parts per million. It was awesome. So this would be a great blog post if you're in that situation like I was. If just say you're taking over a golf course mid-season and you go to their soil tests, it's in it and it's in a form that you don't really understand. Hey, listen, go to this blog post and you'll be able to convert into a number that makes sense to you.
Very good. And yeah, I recommend to everybody, it's much better to look at your soil test results in parts per million, which is going to be in the United States. It's on a mass basis, so that's milligrams per kilogram of soil. So like milligrams of potassium, for example, per kilogram of soil. If you're getting this test done in the UK, it's more common that they express it on a volume basis. So they'll express it typically. It's also parts per million, but now it's milligrams per liter. And they're saying per liter volume of soil, how many milligrams of nutrient do you have? And so that's slightly different than the American ppm, but once you can figure those out also. But the whole pounds per acre thing, and in fact, I answered a question about that yesterday, and I'm planning to make an update on the Pace Turf website about that. So if you're a Pace Turf subscriber, you should see something about that soon, about pounds per acre. I just don't like it because pounds per acre. Somebody said this person wrote to me and said,
Drew Matt Schaefer.
no, it's I won't name the person, but it's somebody who's a Pace Turf subscriber and had some questions about converting between parts per million and pounds per acre, and the person said, if I use the standard conversion, which is a fact, and we're back, Joe. I am famous for these crashes. So
I guess that's the price we pay from doing it thousands and thousands of kilometers away.
no.
Meters.
This is pure hardware. This is the hardware that I'm working with is not stable.
That's all right. We're still getting it done. We're getting it. Listen, we're making this happen. So
So
I'm psyched to be here. I crashes and all. It's not a big deal to me.
So we were talking about the ppm to pounds per acre conversion,
Yes.
and I said
Yeah.
that there's a Pace Turf subscriber that wrote asking and saying, "Hey, I read that you can multiply ppm by 2 or divide pounds per acre by 2, and you'll to convert between them, and yet the information given on the Pace Turf website as far as making some MLSN calculations, that conversion factor doesn't work." And it's because the assumption with a pounds per acre is that you're taking a soil sample that's 6.7 inches deep. But I recommend for turf grass that you take a soil sample that's 4 inches deep. So
Right.
it's based on agriculture and the acre furrow slice. And I just don't see a reason to make the assumption that the pounds per acre that's based on how much is in a 6.7 inch depth. So I prefer to just look at the concentration directly. Anyway, you can read more about that at Pace Turf coming up pretty soon.
Sounds good. Yeah. It's a good blog. Good blog. It should have more reads.
Well, let's see. So that was number 9. We've still got a bit to go, but we can go through some of these quickly, Joe. Like number 8, seminars and conferences, past, present, and future. That's a new conference website with video and translation. That's for the Thai conference that's coming up. And I was pretty impressed that I could make this this website could be translated. So it's a new website for the Thai conference that's coming up March 4 to 6, and I was impressed that I could have that website in English, Thai, Japanese, and Vietnamese now.
Scroll down go scroll down a little bit. I have a comment about this particular blog. Okay, right there, perfect. Micah, that hair in the picture for your
Oh,
media picture,
uh-huh. Yeah.
phenomenal. That is a phenomenal Micah look. I know that you loved switching up your looks. That was the one thing that struck me about this blog. I just couldn't get over the mane. It's a mane, and you look like you should be the lead singer in Goose. You just look phenomenal. Yeah,
Well, thank
loving
you.
it.
Right. So if anybody that's
Devin
listening,
Carroll, watch out.
yeah. So yeah, Bruce Williams, Devin Carroll, Michael Woods, Michael Becken. We're the main speakers at this conference. It's going to be quite a good event, and I'm growing my hair out a little bit now, so you can see that I'm kind of going for that look again because I think that was a nice look.
You look great. You look great. When was that? When was that picture taken? Do you remember or no?
Oh, maybe. I don't remember exactly. Maybe 2019. Maybe it was 2019.
Looks great.
Thank
Looking
you.
great. Another thing about let me ask you. So that's in Thailand, correct?
Yeah, that's the Sustainable Turfgrass Management in Asia conference.
Okay, so there's 4 English speakers right now. Will they speak English and will there be a translator? How does that work?
Uh, the slides will be translated to English and Thai, so the slides might have 2 languages on them, and there will be probably headphones with simultaneous translation, so people who want to hear it in Thai can hear it in Thai. But this conference is a very international conference, and we have usually people from about 20, well, usually from more than 20 countries. And this is like so far we're looking at people coming from Canada, United States, United Arab Emirates, Singapore, Australia, Philippines, Hong Kong, Japan, India, Bangladesh. There's people coming from all over, probably from the
It's
UK.
quite the lineup. I wish I could make it.
Yeah, I think you should. So anyway, it's a nice website, but I totally understand. I totally understand why people may not be so excited about. Let's see, what are we looking at here? I just
The
deleted my
seminars
share
and
screen.
conferences,
Yeah.
past and present and future. Yeah.
So the I mean, I understand why people are not, if they're not going to come to that conference, they're not going to like click through to that. So they wouldn't be so excited. Now, number 7, I thought was really quite a nice one about the tournament diary from KBC Augusta.
That's an excellent one.
And so this one, I think just like people think it's not relevant to them, maybe because it's on Zoysia greens, maybe because it's in a different country. But I've learned a lot from working at the KBC Augusta tournament and from doing my consulting work with KA Golf Club and Andrew McDaniel. And, a lot of the stuff that I recommend now, like clipping volume and OM246, I've either learned about that there or been inspired about that, and by checking the tournament conditions year after year, it helps me refine what the utility and use of these things are. So, like for me, it's really interesting, but obviously not interesting to everybody else.
But there's some really cool facts about that tournament that were different from the ones that you did in the past. Uh, the data was different, and it was because Andrew did a cultivation. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I mean it's softer, definitely, and the green speed's slower, because the grass was better, the bobble test was much better this year. So I'm sharing all that and explaining it, and I don't know that in a podcast is it's hard to talk about that other blog post, but I encourage people to read it because it's exactly that. They did cultivation, and that brought the organic material down, but it made the surfaces softer, but it did make the grass healthier, and then the surfaces were smoother, but because they were growing more, the speed wasn't as fast. And I put that all in data, and it all makes sense, and it's really predictable. And yet it's probably not so predictable if you're not measuring those data. So sometimes people just go do this work without really measuring. And yeah.
Did the players know a difference? Did they notice a difference in the playability?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I talked with Eric Sugimoto, and he's a pro. And it was interesting talking with him because he'd played the previous year, and we were talking about the conditions this year, and he guessed that we'd put a lot of topsoil or something on. So he doesn't know the exact greenkeeping terms, but he could tell that the surfaces were a lot smoother than they were the previous year. And it's right. They had put much more top dressing than in previous years.
Another thing that I found interesting about this blog was the afternoon and morning differences, right? The differences in the bobble test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was fascinated that bent grass, there was more of a variation in bent grass because you had done a tournament in Europe. I can't remember the name of the place off the top of my head because of the C, right? I can't.
It's Kamiral.
Yes. Okay. So the zoysia, there was like a point three or point three difference in the bobble test on every third roll or something, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and at the in the with the bent grass, it was different.
Yeah.
It
So
was
so
more.
yeah. So the zoysia, the leaf blades are really stiff, which means it's quite difficult to get a good roll. But because those leaves are stiff and because the surfaces are relatively firm, it doesn't change much during the day. So you can put 140 rounds of golf and 140 caddies and however many pitch marks there are, and you put all that traffic on it. And if you check the bobble test, the way that that bobble test works out, what it means to change by zero point 0.3 over the course of the day means for if you roll the ball 3 times, 2 of those rolls are going to be the exact same smoothness and trueness as you saw before that play ever went on it. And on one of those rolls, you could expect to see an additional chatter or an additional snake. So that's a minor drop because 2 out of 3 rolls are going to be the same as they were in the morning in terms of smoothness and trueness. And what I noticed with creeping bent grass at that tournament that I did in Spain, the because the leaf blades are a little bit softer and maybe the surface is just a little bit softer, then you would expect for every single roll, you would expect in the afternoon to measure an additional chatter or snaking event, which means it's quite noticeable. It's not that you get the same roll in the afternoon as you do in the morning. It's noticeably worse. Where on these zoysia greens, at Kea Golf Club, during this tournament, on 66% of the rolls, it would be the same smoothness and trueness.
Yeah, I found that fascinating. I would have never guessed that. If you would have asked me what surface remains smoother throughout the day, I would have just automatically assumed bent grass. I would have never assumed the crunchy zoysia, which was another thing about this blog post that you mentioned, the crunchiness, and you did videos that could be linked to YouTube about it. Were pretty cool. I thought this was a very modern piece. This is when you go read an article. I'm a subscriber to The Athletic, and when you go read an article on The Athletic, there'll be links and tweets and videos and graphs just like this, and that's what's really cool about this blog, is that it's very modern.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a read and you're done. There are there's all these things that you can, like all these externals. Oh, the fan vest, awesome. Like,
Do they
talk
have
to me
those?
about the huh?
Do they have those in the U.S.? They
I have
must.
not seen a fan vest. I've not.
Really?
I've seen they have vests that keep you warm, right?
Okay.
They're heater packs that keep you warm, but I've
Yeah.
never seen one that keeps you cool. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
I
So
had
these
it in
things
my notes.
these things are pretty common in Asia, and it is hot. It is hot in Japan in August. It's hot in China in August. It's hot in a lot of East and Southeast Asia in August. And it's in these places to work outside, it's common to have these vests or jackets that have a fan in them to blow air. So that keeps you cool. And so
Do they work?
I've not worn one, but I'm sure they work. I see a lot of people wearing it for much of the year, so I'm pretty confident that they work.
No, that's what I loved about this blog, that it was just modern. It felt like a modern piece that I would see in Athletic, where you have all these external links explaining what you're writing about, which I thought was rad.
Well, great, and I wish that that one would get more views. That's the one on the tournament diary, because I put a lot of information in there that's about playability and it's about how the maintenance work affects the playability, and I just can't really overstate how important that is. And I talked with the golf course owner at Kea Golf Club, or the president of the club, and he's quite interested in this kind of stuff. He he wasn't so pleased with the cultivation that got done. He wasn't so pleased with the amount of sand top dressing that got applied. He was pleased with the playability during the tournament. But the whole idea is, how can we do it better next year? How can we figure out a way to make the golfers happy, make the president of the club happy, and still have the desired conditions? And it's something that the grammar of greenkeeping, which we're applying there, about trying to manage the growth rate and manage the playability, and collecting some key data. I'm explaining it all. I'm sharing what we're doing, and here's the progress this year, and then comparing it to last year, comparing it to other places. To me, that's really fascinating, and I think for some people they would like it. So I don't know, a little bit surprised that particular post didn't get very many views.
Yeah, I love the tournament diary. I look forward to that one every year. That one's great, and yeah, I don't understand because it's modern. Like I said, there's all these external links, and it just a lot of information there, and just you cultivate it, the surfaces got softer.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's just like there's some good information. Oh, there was more clip vol this year,
Yeah.
right?
And, well, you
Due to
have
the
to, if
yeah.
you cultivate the surface, so you punch a bunch of holes in it and you put sand top dressing on it. So now you have to have recovery. So you have to put more fertilizer. And also doing that cultivation, it decompacts the soil a little bit. It gets more air into the soil. So that stimulates growth. Plus you put fertilizer to get it to recover. And of course you're going to get more growth. And then if you get more growth, you can't get the green speed. And that kind of stuff is so like predictable. And I knew it was going to happen, and then we documented it. Well, I feel like some people don't realize that stuff is going to happen. So they cultivate, they like core aerify and top dress and think that's going to make the greens firmer. But it doesn't. It makes the greens softer. And if you're not measuring it and not paying attention, you can go through your life with a slightly misguided view of what's happening from the work that you're doing, which I think is something that we should always try to correct.
That was the first time that Andrew had done any type of aeration in top. Well, I know he top dresses, but not nearly as much as the industry norm.
Well,
But that
even
was
this
the
year,
yeah.
even this year, the sand amount is like 1/3 of is less. He put less sand than Chris Trittabaugh puts at Hazeltine, and Chris Hazeltine is putting like 1/3 of the industry norm.
Yeah,
Or 1/3 of the minimum recommendation or something like that. So it's not a huge amount of sand. But when Andrew started there in 2013, when Andrew started at KA Golf Club, my recommendation was to do as much coring and as much top dressing as you could. He did that in 2013. He did it in 2014, and it just wasn't it wasn't making the surfaces firmer. And we just really struggled to get those holes to recover because it's a warm season grass in a place with winter, and so you have a tournament in the summer, so it's just kind of tricky to punch those holes and get them to recover. So he moved more and more towards not punching holes and not putting sand, and I was quite concerned about that because I am advising him, and I was afraid that something, if he didn't core, if he didn't punch solid holes, if he didn't get sand into the profile, I was quite concerned that something would happen underground that we didn't notice initially that would come back to bite us later, perhaps during the tournament when it rained a lot or the dew point changed or whatever, and all of a sudden the surfaces would get too soft or the mowers would start scalping or balls would start plugging or something. So as he started moving after 2013, 2014, 2015, and he just said, I can't do this anymore. It's not working. The textbook way is not working. So he cut back, not because he wanted to cut back, but he had to produce, to try to make the surfaces better. So that's when we started doing OM246, and we started figuring out how that method's going to work. and what the numbers are going to mean. So we started doing that to make sure that nothing bad was happening underground that we didn't see. And so a lot of the stuff was developed there, and like 2017 was the year. Maybe 2017 was the first year he didn't punch any holes, and then it went on for quite a while. He did core in 2020 when they didn't have a tournament due to the pandemic, and then 2021, 2022 there were no holes, and then I was like 2023, let's go ahead and do this again. Let's like maybe once every 4 years we can do this. And then we did it, and it's like, man, that's such a hassle. and then the surfaces get softer, the grass grows more, you get more clipping volume, the green speed goes down. But it's like we know now what's going to happen, and it's just like how to refine it. But it's pretty interesting to get really good surfaces that that you can play high quality professional golf on, really high end member golf, and to do that with now 2 coring events. That was the first. This year was the first time he's ever deep tined since he's been there. So that was the
and
first.
when you say deep time, that's a vertidrain style, like going.
That was a vertidrain machine, with like a I don't know, 8-inch or
it goes
10-inch
down
side.
and it gives it's almost here. Let me get it goes down into soil and gives it one of these, and
Yeah,
then comes up.
that's
It's
right.
like
Although we set it without much of a kick on it for this year.
okay.
But I think that was maybe the second coring since 2015 or something like that. So yeah, almost a decade, just two coring events, and the first deep tine in over a decade. So yeah, I mean, anyway, it's an interesting post. You can
I
check
think
it
it's a
out.
great post. Yeah, I think people should.
And then number 6, new seminar section on the website. Not terribly surprised why this one didn't, because it's like it didn't get a huge number of views. But actually, these seminar handouts have been getting quite a few views. I've got like a dozen of them up there now on the seminar handouts webpage. And when I go to these events and make an online handout, a lot of people have been going to look at these.
Yeah, that's something I'll probably do that this week. I haven't been looking at the seminar handouts. Listen, it's winter in Delaware. It's cold. I'm spending a lot of time in my office. Recently reading Mike Kaiser's book about banded dunes and practical greenkeeping. Those are the books that I'm reading at work right now. And
Yeah, I heard you're reading Practical Greenkeeping.
yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So I'm on the aeration chapter right now. And
Do you remember?
yeah.
Didn't I tell you that I think greenkeepers in the UK, they're just concerned about decompacting the soil, so it's just like all about aeration and putting seaweed or something like that.
Yeah, I mean he recommends Jim Arthur, and it was funny when remember when I was pushing back on Schaefer, and I mentioned you and I mentioned Jim Arthur, the writer of Practical Greenkeeping. I didn't really know who he was because what are they right? He was it was such a just like a kind of a passive aggressive remark he made where he said, "Oh, what I was talking about, it doesn't sound like you're a minimalist greenkeeper," and I was using examples about you. I think I was talking about micros, and his response was Matt Schaefer's response was, "Oh, what are they writers? What there's nobody's getting their paycheck signed by anybody," and I was like, "No," and I explained who you were, and I
Yeah,
didn't really know who
I've
Jim Arthur is. Like, and so like that next day, I went and looked him up. And listen, Jim Arthur's got some major credibility. And
yeah, he was consultant for the RNA for the Open
yeah,
Championship venues for the longest time. So he was
yeah,
yeah, he's pretty
Yeah,
famous.
this is legit. And so yeah, I just finished the top dressing, and yeah, he recommends that you top dress with an 80-20. No 90-10. He's like, nah, don't do a 90-10. His recommendation is just like an 80 with a 20%. And I think I'm reading the second edition, which came out in the late 90s. So it's a peat. It's a peat mixture. You go with a peat mixture, but I don't know. It makes sense. Oh, you
And
grabbing it?
I've got the
Nice.
I've got the third edition.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I went.
Yeah.
The third edition was going to cost me like $90. I got the second edition, which cost me 45 or something. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
loving it though. It's really cool. I like it. It's a good read. He's
it's a
so it's so British UK style. The way he writes and his terminology and just I love it. It's so good.
yeah, and I like it. And I like to pull quotes from it. I think my grammar of greenkeeping approach, which you can read about in the short grammar of greenkeeping, that I think my approach works better around the world, because the problem that you have with practical greenkeeping is he'll say something like you never need to apply phosphorus, which is probably true in the UK with that kind of climate and with that type of soils. You know, once there's enough in the soil, you should just be fine. But it's not going to work like if you go to Ho Chi Minh City or Colombo or Dhaka or Sydney or something. It's like it's just a little bit different when you go change the climate and you change the grass types. And I think the thing about practical greenkeeping is it's very regionally accurate, but it doesn't transfer all over the world so well. And that's where I think my approach can be a little bit more useful for anybody. You know, if you're in Perth, if you're in Auckland, if you're in Johannesburg, or if you're in London, it's going to work.
Wilmington, Delaware.
Or if you're in Wilmington, Delaware, Toronto, wherever. So
Gotcha.
let's
No, but
see.
so brings me back. Yeah, I'm gonna get this week. I'm gonna check out some seminar handouts for sure.
Check it out. Yeah, what I try to do is I update it, so I'll put the slides on there, and then when people ask me questions, like, can you explain how this works, or what do you think about when it's winter time and should we be pushing the grass? How does that work, or something? If people ask questions, and then sometimes I want to answer or put that on the handout, I will, so I can add extra information. So I think it's interesting just to browse through those. Let's see. We're down to the top 5 now. Number 5, putting green data from measurement to summary. I think it's useful to understand how numbers work.
Yeah, the surface firmness is. Listen, I don't have a way to measure surface firmness except the Jason Haynes method. It's too soft, it's medium, it's too firm. Right? Those are the three. That's how I measure firmness on a green. And I found, Micah, and this is anecdotal, I find that the firmer the green, the better it rolls. Would you say that firmness correlates to green performance, green roll in a way that's positive?
No, I wouldn't quite go that far, because if you think about like a concrete surface, it's quite firm, but the ball is going to tend to bounce across it.
Okay.
And so I think you have to get greens to be pretty soft. I guess there's like an optimal firmness level is what I mean to say. Because if greens get too soft, they get footprints and stuff like that, and then the quality of the roll gets pretty bad. But if surfaces are too firm, as surfaces get firmer and firmer, the ball is also not going to roll as smoothly, because there's something about having that soft, a certain level of softness that the ball can roll across. So I think there is a maximum firmness that would optimize the smoothness.
Okay. So I see you have this chart right here, and you're scrolling up. So what about this? What about this blog? Should
Well,
we take away from it?
well, I think it's useful to understand how numbers work, and so this is just simply saying if you're looking at the average. So I'm just showing how I distill it down to the average, but I'm just showing all the individual measurements first and just saying it's quite variable, and then we're looking at that individual number, because that's what people want, is they want to know what's the firmness today. And so I do that for soil moisture, and I do that for green speed. I do that for bobble test. People just want to know one number, but actually the measurements are quite varied, and I just like to show how I go about doing that and how I suggest for greenkeepers. I recommend, if you're working with measurements, go take the measurements on at least 3 holes, on 3 greens per 18 holes, so you can capture some of that variability. And in fact, I make multiple measurements per green so I can check the variability within a green and between greens. And I think that if we're trying to make things as consistent as possible, we need to check what the variability is also. So that was just like a throw together blog post of showing four or five charts in sequence that go from all the data to the data averaged by hole, and then to the data averaged by all the holes put together. And you see that the spread was quite different.
Yeah. Again, another informative blog that probably should have some more views.
I don't know. Some have to finish bad. I think most people aren't interested in that kind of stuff, obviously. But let's see what else. I think we're down to number 4. A couple of these are quite good. Yeah. So this one is the one additional chatter or
Yeah,
snaking
I think
event
I
in
got
every
this.
third ball roll.
Yeah, I think this is the one I got confused with the.
Well, I
I
would have
got the
met.
two confused with
I
the KBC Diary one and this one. It was
well
in
I,
this one where. Go ahead.
Well, I would have mentioned it in both of them, but yeah, if you're measuring the bobble test, because of the scoring scale, I have another blog post that shows that scoring scale, and if you're unsure if you've had a chatter or a snaking event, then you get a 9. If you clearly see one chatter or snaking event, it gets an 8. And if you clearly see 2, then it gets a 7. And so then the way it works out is if you're dropping down by 0.3 bobble score units, then it means 1 out of every 3 rolls had an additional imperfection in the roll. And that is what this blog post was about. And I understand that a lot of people don't do the bobble test. I, and that's fine, but I like it, and I like to explain how it works.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the Bible test this year. We talked a lot about that on the Micah Woods annual holiday special, whatever it's called. We did talk about that, and I am going to be on the Bible test. And I think this is what I think. I think the title, if you would have given it something more catchy, right? And I know titles are hard to come up with. I remember when I was writing for Golfdom, and I had to come up with the title for the column. I was very bad at coming up with the title. Usually, it was Seth Jones or somebody on their staff coming up with the title. And I just thought that maybe you could do something. The title was one additional chatter or snaking event on every third ball roll. It should have been maybe you could have gone like Seinfeld style and been like chatter. What's chatter? Every third one. I don't know, something to maybe something that's going to get you the click. That was just kind of my takeaway. I read the piece. I thought it was interesting. The information was interesting, and I thought, and this is just me thinking about it, perhaps the title just needs to be a little bit more catchy.
Yeah, the title is big. I try not to do clickbait too much with the thumbnails or with the
Yeah,
titles.
I wanted to stay away from the clickbait. I didn't want you to get click because this isn't clickbaity information. But if something, I don't know how you could have titled it better.
Oh,
Uh, and that's just a
I should ask.
small little crucial. Like, it's small, just a small little, you know.
Yeah. Well, I thought the next one, the Tour de France, I think was the next one.
That's a great title.
That's a nice title, but that finished
Yeah,
number
dude,
3. So
that's so good.
yeah, like Tour de France de Michael Woods.
A
Um,
great poster.
a great poster. That photo I think was 2015. So yeah,
Yeah,
I tried to keep my images updated. You see, like John Kaminsky's been using that particular photo of him from a laboratory from probably like a 2011 era photo or something like that. And like
yeah, you gotta
every now
update
and then I'll
that.
use an old one, but I tried to keep it updated because on the cover of my book. So this is my Micah Nojikan, the book. Let's see.
Uh huh.
I'll bring it. Uh, I'll
There
make
you
it
go.
larger. Yeah. So this is a picture of me that was taken in 2007. I think that's the book cover. And every time people see that book, which is a lot, it's on its second or maybe even its third printing by now.
Yeah, I
So people
forget.
see
That's
that
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
people see that and they're like, when was that picture taken? And I'm like, well, that was the one that we decided to put on the cover, but it was almost 20 years ago. So I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's good to show one that's updated.
I forget who it was, but thought to myself, "Holy moly, they need to upgrade their stock photo because it was a photo of them so many. It might have been Kaminsky. It might have been Kaminsky.
Yeah, because he uses this one and it's like, dude, that it's an old picture. And so anyway,
Yeah,
but yeah, so this one from France, it's just like announcing seminars. So I understand, like, if we're just announcing seminars, people don't get so excited. So that's quite predictable.
yeah, that's a predictable one. I can honestly say I probably didn't click on that one, Mike. I'll admit. Now, how was France? How was a this one's great. Can a soil sample dry too much? This one's pretty rad. But real quick about France, I, Paris. What a wonderful place to have a turf seminar. How
It,
was it?
it was. You see on my Instagram page, I've put up that picture from the golf course where we had the seminar, looking down, and you can see the Eiffel Tower. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's it's great. I really enjoyed the seminars in France, and there are some really advanced turfgrass management techniques being employed there, and yeah, it was terrific. I had really good translation and a really great group of people who attended those seminars, and a lot of people who are interested in things like MLSN, clipping volume, the growth ratio, and all of this kind of stuff. And it's exciting for me to realize that these techniques that I find so useful, they can be used all over the world, and they make sense to people in France, in Australia, in South Africa, and all over.
That's cool. So again, the question: do you present in English? Is your French good enough to present it in French? How does that work out? Or do most people in attendance understand enough English to get by?
Oh, I think people can get the general gist of it when I'm speaking in English. But yeah, we have translations. So I speak for a few sentences or a paragraph, and then that gets translated, and I think what I'm going to say next, and then I talk again. So
Cool. Yeah,
yeah,
just interested in that. Just interested in how that goes down.
and I
But
think
that's
we
cool, man. Yeah, it's
and
awesome.
the slides. See, the slides were in French. So if you go to that seminar page on my website and check the slides, they'll be in French. And so people are looking at slides that are already in French, and then I'm talking in English, but I'm talking about things. If we're all in the turfgrass business, everybody kind of understands like the general idea of what we're talking about, and then the details, it's getting translated. So it works good.
Yeah, so Jason Haynes was doing a program in Halifax and he had to go to French. I could probably follow along somehow because it's the language, it's the international language of greenkeeping that we all kind of understand.
Grammar of greenkeeping.
There you go.
There we go. And then I think the number 2 post of the year for the least views was "Can soil samples dry too much?" I think this is pretty important. I hope 10 years from now that more people dry their soil samples. This was a question from a soil testing client who said, "Hey, I collected these samples. They've been drying for a long time. Sorry, I haven't been able to get them in the mail yet. Can they dry too much?" And the answer is no. And I showed a picture from the park grass experiment, which is it's from the archive at Rothamsted. But these samples were from the park grass experiment from plot 11-2, and the samples were collected
Wow, yeah.
February and March 1876 to
That's
a,
pretty awesome.
and those samples have been stored in these corked bottles since 1876. And yeah, you do have like slight certain changes with certain things, but the the soil at the laboratory is going to be dried before it's analyzed anyway for a routine soil analysis, soil nutrient analysis. It will be dried as a matter of course. You might as well dry it first. It'll reduce your shipping cost, but more importantly, it's going to stop microbial activity. It's going to stop mineralization. It's going to stop ion exchange. And I think that when we sample a soil, we want to know what the soil conditions were like when it was still in the soil. We don't want to know what the conditions were like when it's been wet in a bag at undefined temperature for 2 weeks. And so I recommend drying soil samples before sending them to a laboratory. And it's not common. I think the average, the typical person is just going to take a sample and ship it to the lab. But
Yeah, I mean,
I don't recommend it.
I remember when I was in New York Country Club and I had some soil tests done. And the person I sent them to, I did not try out the soil. I didn't know. I didn't know until you started talking about this pretty much this year in
Yeah.
23, not 24, 23.
Well,
I had no idea.
I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, but yeah, it's like Larry Stoll from the founder of Pace Turf with Wendy Galernter. They had done a lot of soil testing over the years and often got different nitrogen results than I did. And Larry never recommended drying. And so people are sending samples that are wet to the lab and they end up with much higher nitrate levels than I would ever get. But my samples, I dry before I send them to the lab, and then you get much less nitrate. And I kept telling Larry, like, I don't think that you really have more nitrate in your soils. I just think it's an artifact of the way that you're handling the samples. And there's, I mean, that's just the way it is. It's what happens. You get mineralization happening, and you get conversion to nitrate as you have more air in the soil, and you get that air happening. You got higher temperatures, and usually you'll get higher temperatures, and you'll get more air in the sample, as it's wet, making its way to the laboratory. And it's better just to dry it, and it'll stop all of that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I listen. We're gonna get some soil tests together, and guess what? They're gonna be dry.
Yeah, when are you going to get that done? Are you going to do that with
I hope this
ATC, or
week.
are you
I
going to do
hope
that
this
with
week.
you doing that with ATC, or are you doing that
We're
with another company?
we're gonna do some with ATC. We're gonna do our OM246, and I'm gonna send you some soil tests. We're definitely doing our OM246 with you.
Okay, nice.
Yes.
That's good. So let's discuss the details of those and make sure that those samples get collected and handled very carefully. I
Absolutely.
I I I'll talk about something now that is just on my mind, and it's not really related to these bottom 10 posts, but it's something that's a little bit boring perhaps for some people, but it's so important. Soil testing is like a 4-step process. And that process, the 4 components of it are sampling, laboratory analysis, interpretation, and then a recommendation based on that interpretation. So there's those 4 steps. And I think that the sampling tends to be a little bit haphazard. The laboratory testing, the second part, is very standardized. If you're using something like MLSN for interpretation and recommendation, that's very standardized. So you've got some parts that are quite standardized, but the way people collect and handle samples is all over the place. You'll find some people are going to remove the thatch from a sample. Other people are not going to remove thatch from a sample. Some people dry the sample. Some people don't dry the sample. Some people collect very carefully to a 4-inch or 10 centimeter depth. Other people are collecting to the depth of the root zone at the particular, however they want to feel the depth of the root zone is at that time. Other people are collecting to the mat layer of like where the soil color has changed. That some people are collecting to 6 inches. Some people collect to 8 inches. It's all over the place with the sampling. And I think that there's an opportunity to really have more standardization in sampling. And that is something that I think could really help people get even better use out of soil testing.
It makes sense. I know that I've always done 4-inch. You go anytime that I've had to collect the soil sample myself, and I've been doing this for, geez, Mike, over 20 years. 98 is when I started in this business. I probably collecting samples in the early aughts, if we're gonna be technical or honest about it. So yeah, it's always been 4 inches. You get that soil probe, and you just get your ruler, and you either get a Sharpie or a piece of duct tape, and you mark it at the 4 inches, and you take it to that 4 inch. But I've always left that tuft of grass with the organic material attached to that 4 inches. Am I
Well,
doing it right?
good for you. That's how I currently recommend it. But there were a number of years earlier in my career when I removed it. And for my PhD research, I removed that. I pinched off the grass, and now I recommend for standardization. I recommend leaving it on. The laboratory has machines that remove it. Let the machines remove it so it's consistent every time. And so I've been working on this also, like how many subsamples do you take if you're going to go sample your practice putting green for nutrients. So you're going to check pH, soil organic matter, potassium, phosphorus. You're going to go down to a 4-inch depth. How many subsamples are you going to take with that probe to make up that one sample that's representative of that putting green?
Yeah, I'd probably take anywhere from 6 to 12.
So you take 6 to 12, and I did a survey recently on Twitter or on X and
Yeah.
asked that question. And I think that was number one, was like in that 6 to 12 range
Yeah.
but it's only like 45% of the people answered that. So you realize, there's a couple of things that surprised me about that. Number one is the recommendation from Rutgers and from Penn State is to take 12 or more. Okay. So you've already got like the number one answer is people are doing less than is recommended. And then even so, that's less than half the people are doing that. So there's this wide range. Some people are taking less than 5. Some people are taking more than 12. And it's just like all over the place how samples are collected. And it's like if you want to go talk to John, is it Jacob or Jacobs?
John Jacob.
John Jacob. So he did some sampling last year, and like he'll sample in a certain way, and then if you sample in a different way, but then you want to compare those results, like there's a potential, even though like the lab procedure would be the same, the MLSN interpretation and recommendation would be the same because those are standardized. But if you haven't standardized the way you collect the samples, that is, that's that makes it difficult to compare. And I think with how precise greenkeeping gets these days, we have an opportunity to standardize the soil testing a little bit. So
Well,
like the soil sampling, right?
Yeah, like I'm sure you'll be at the lead of that. I don't doubt that you'll be leading that charge.
Oh yeah, like the drying and stuff. That if you talk to John Emerson, he doesn't like drying samples, and I keep trying to explain to him why I recommend it, but he like wants to get the sample to the lab as soon as possible. So he thinks that like somehow I'm delaying the time that it gets to the lab. But I'm like, but it's wet when it's going to the lab. So I want to dry it as soon as possible because it's going to dry at the lab anyway. So yeah, I think there's definitely some it's difficult to standardize.
What does Kreuzer think? I know he does a lot of soil sampling. What's his take? I know the Greenkeeper app does soil sampling. It sold at what's sold at's take? Do you know?
If I remember what Soldat says, and we've talked about this before. In fact we have an entire ATC double cut episode that's on the topic of avoiding mistakes in soil sampling, or just in the soil testing process in general, just avoiding mistakes. And if I remember right, what he recommends is do what you've always done. So don't change it. Like sample at the same time of year, sample in the same way that you did previously, send to the same lab that you did previously, and just that you're doing everything.
Yeah,
be consistent. And I think I want to be a little bit more strict than that. And I want to say, if you're not, like, let's say you're sampling to 3 inches and it would be better to sample at 4 inches, then I say just fix it now. Just change to sample to 4 inches. So now you can compare to everybody else. Let's say that you've been sending the samples wet to the lab. Well, I would just say, like, just start. I would like to say, let's just everybody start now to do it better, instead of saying, well, I've been taking the top 2 inches off because I have a lot of that and just sending that. Like, I don't recommend that. Let them laboratory machinery decide what's that and what's not.
Well, I'm having somebody on very soon who's going to be doing soil tests, and I'll ask that person.
Yeah, I think it's good, and it's something that I want to revisit. And who would be interesting to ask also is Travis Shaddix, right? Because he might be opinionated about that, and I hope he would, because he would be like the perfect person to explain the four steps of soil testing, because I think that he's very familiar with sampling, laboratory testing, interpretation, and recommendation. And I just don't see where sampling is as standardized in the turfgrass industry as I think it could be. And especially with that, the number of subsamples that get recommended. And I've done some research that suggests that maybe we can do equally good. In fact, theoretically, we'd get better recommendations by taking one sample from your practice putting green rather than 6 to 12.
Dude, I'm all about That's a lot easier than
It's
6 to 12.
dude. And so when I collect samples, I'm just shocked at how much time it takes. When I would typically take I used to take 5 samples to represent an area, and it takes forever to take 5. And then I see people some people told me they take almost 30. They're like as many as they can, but they're like generally from
Wow.
20 to 30. I'm like, holy cow. I think it takes a lot of time to do 5 subsamples.
Shipping cost on that?
Well, I mean, you're
On
supposed to not
30
send.
samples?
The thing is, you're supposed to be taking a subsample out of that. That's if you read the instructions from Rutgers or for Penn State, they'll say take 12 or more subsamples, put them in a clean bucket, stir it up, and then take a subsample out of that with enough material to meet the lab's minimum requirement. But I think it's really problematic when you have grass and thatch and stems and rhizomes and roots to really subsample out of that, especially when it's wet. How do you get an accurate subsample out of that? And if it's from a sand-based putting green, you're going to tend to be getting a lot more sand, which is lower in the profile, and less of the organic material. So again, I recommend sampling just enough material to meet the lab's requirement. Send that to the lab. Let the lab take the sample out of it. So I don't like subsampling out of a bucket. So the whole thing to me seems like it's a ripe area for improvement. And speaking of ripe areas for improvement, how about this number 1 post of the year for fewest views? The worst post of the year on botanical walks and circle cuts.
I mean, I love a botanical walk, particularly ones where you go on botanical walks and explain what you're seeing. And listen, I've never seen a circle mow on a bent grass green. I've seen them on Bermuda greens, never on a bent grass green. And it automatically made me want to try a circle cut on the greens that I'm managing. Although I have some Poano on mine, so I don't know. Do you think it could be worth it to try on a Poano green?
I think so. I think it's a nice technique, and it helps to avoid you get like zero traffic on the green surrounds, which at certain times of the year, the green surrounds don't need any traffic. But the green itself can be a little bit healthier. The grass is being mowed at an appropriate height, and I think with a good operator, that circle mow can be really good to help deal with some grain issues, to deal with some unruly grass blade issues, and it's fast, and you end up doing a triple, quadruple cut, whatever, on some of the green. So anyway, those are 2 nice videos. But again, as I mentioned earlier, a long time ago, not everybody likes to watch videos, and a lot of the people that read my blog are not the same people that want to sit down and watch a video. Or if they watch a video, they'll do that through the YouTube app, but they're not like wanting to read my blog to watch a video. So I thought those were 2 really nice videos, and I wanted to share them because I was so excited about that remake of my botanical walk video. And then I was excited to share that that circle mow video. But yeah, that something had to finish last, and that was it.
Oh my goodness, circle mow. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna do it this year.
I would try, and yeah, just make
You know what I'll
gentle
do?
circles.
You know what I'll do? I'll do a bobble test, and then I'll circle mow, and I'll do a bobble test and see if it helps.
Yeah, maybe. And I think, yeah, you should measure the clipping volume and then do a circle mow and measure the clipping volume again.
Again, yeah, totally. That's another great thing. Okay, so what will be the difference in clipping volume when you circle mow as opposed to just doing a regular stripe?
I would think that a circle mow would get 2.5 times the clippings.
Okay, I can't wait to try. I'm going to try it this year.
Good. Well, yeah. So you've got all kinds of things to try. You're going to bobble test this year.
Yeah,
You're going to
bobble
try.
test.
You're going to try the circle mow. You're going to do some
Yes.
OM246 testing. So
one subsample per. Yeah, at 4 inches. Yeah, dude, it's a brand new year. Why do we make it so hard? 12 or more. Take it in a bucket. Mix it all up
I I
and get
think
a subsample. It's just everything is so hard.
well it's I
Balance
can
soils.
I can understand why it's that way because I think it's kind of designed for lawns. Maybe it's
Right.
originally people are thinking about lawns, and maybe they're thinking you're only sampling one lawn. So you want to make sure that you really represent your lawn soil. So they say take 12 or more subsamples. But on golf courses, I've always tested multiple greens. So I send like one sample from the putting green, one sample from green 2, one sample from green 3, one sample from green 8 or something from 9 holes. So if I've tested multiple greens and each one of them has a sample, that's kind of the way that I do it. But I think sometimes that you need to take 12 subsamples comes from if you're only going to test one area. So like if you just want to test one green and then you're going to extrapolate from that to everywhere, then you want to make sure that it's representative. But I don't know that it necessarily is representative, so that's why I don't want to just test one green. That I don't know that this topic has been studied as much as it could be.
No, I think it makes sense to look into it for sure. I would love to know the variances. What do you think? Obviously, you don't think there's going to be much. Do you think the data would be muddled with more, or do you
No, it's
think you feel that the data is going to be just you're going to be so much more precise if you just take less samples, and the way that you say to collect them, meaning the
well,
4 inch with everything on the
no,
way that you want it to be done.
no. Are you soil testing to find the average, or are you soil testing to find deficiency? Which one are you trying to do? What do you care more about the average or about the
I'm trying to
deficiency?
find efficiency, right? Like
Right.
I'm trying to find if there's something that I need to add.
So it's better to have samples that are more variable so that you can capture the minimum and the maximum. But if you take 12 subsamples and you mix them all together, then you have variability in the soil, but you'll get some areas have more phosphorus, some areas have less, and so you'll end up your samples that have a lot of phosphorus are going to overshadow the ones that have less. When you mix that all together, then on average, you're going to get some average, but you don't get your extremes. By doing the single core sampling that I'm so keen on doing now, and I'm not saying just do one core from one green and that's all you're testing. You still need to test like 4 or 5 greens so that you get a range of low and high. So the idea is we want to capture more of that variability. If we capture more of that variability, we should be able to identify deficiencies better than if we overshadow that by mixing all of our samples together. And that's why I'm saying theoretically this is better.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's easier. It's just easier to do.
It is so much easier, and I speak from experience. It's it's quite fun to do, and I
Right.
can go
Well,
sample. I can get all the samples from greens in 15 minutes, and
that's great.
and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking. I could go sample 6 greens in 15 minutes pretty easily.
Well, if John Emerson were to do it last year, he did ours for oh god, when 2021 and or 2022 into 23. He came in December, and it took him some days. It took because we have such a big property.
It took
It took
him
him about
days.
took him days. I mean, he was out there. He was like, "Yeah, I'll come and do them all." And dude, he was like, he got to my course and it was 2:30, and I was said to John, I was like, "John, we're out of here, dude. You got to bring that card in, son." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess I got to come back." And he actually came back, and I helped him with it. I said, "Just tell me, I know where to go here. I'm gonna go sample some." And he came back like a week later, and we finished all the sampling. It was because we were taking so many samples, right? We were
Hmm.
doing it the that way, where we take 12 subsamples in an area and put it in a bag and mix it all up, and yeah, man.
Well, yeah. So we'll see how this develops. But yeah,
I know. Well,
I
I can't wait to ask the person. I'm having a person on that does some soil testing. This person is a consultant, so I will ask that person.
yeah, the sampling procedure, because
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's interesting, and I've been thinking maybe I'll ask Travis, maybe I'll ask Doug, maybe I'll ask Bill. I can ask Beth Gertall. There's various people that are involved with soil science a little bit who probably have some opinions about it. So
Well, Travis is a soil truther, so I mean, he should know.
yeah, I think he could tell me if I was doing it wrong. So
Right.
yeah, I might ask him.
Probably
Yeah,
on an
that would be a good
animated
blog
YouTube
post.
video.
I I have the idea to do a blog post now. I can probably would not be the lowest ranked one of 2024. I could just ask those people that I just mentioned and just say, please tell me how you recommend the sampling part.
No, I think it's great. I think it's
That would
great
be good.
because I don't think people realize. It's just it's like, oh, just go get the core sampler, right? The whatever that tool is called. What?
Hmm.
God,
It's
I'm spacing
core
on it.
sampler. Yeah.
Core sampler. Yeah, just go get the core sampler and go out there and collect some cores.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm down. I listen. Love it.
Awesome. Well, anything else before we go, Joe? I'll put a direct link to your podcast, the Talking Greenkeeper.
Thank you.
And I recommend to everybody. Some people even mentioned to me, like they're like, man, they'll look right to me and say, I listened to Joe's podcast. He's really doing a service to the industry. And I just thought that was nice to hear that people appreciate the guests and conversations that you have.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's yeah, it's awesome. And I love having those conversations, and I feel like it's gotten better. I can't even listen to the early episodes. Can't even go back. I feel that they're so much better and fine tuned. An episode back when I first started would last like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and it was a lot of just dribble. And now they've just tightened up to where I feel that I'm putting information out there that's good, where somebody can go out there, a golf course superintendent can go out during the day and do a job and put their headphones in and get some good information. An assistant who's aspiring to become a golf course superintendent can get some valuable knowledge. Uh, yeah, it's just really cool. People have said, "Oh, you should try and make it to where if people listen to your podcast, they get credits."
Oh,
Uh, yeah, like they get educational credits. I'm like, I don't know about that. It's going a little too far, but um, it is cool. It is cool, and I take it very seriously, and I want to put a good product out. So yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that people are enjoying the podcast, and I'm gonna keep going with it.
well, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me for this episode. And
Of course, anytime, Mike, anytime. What are you planning? Do you have anything planned for your birthday?
I might go golfing. I have not played golf yet this year, so I tentatively plan to go to the golf course.
That's cool. That's
And
awesome.
I got a really cool device now, invented by Alexander Grangs, who's the equipment manager at Shili Golf Club in South China. I was just over in Hong Kong, and he gave me a device that he invented, which is a prism gauge, an effective height of cut gauge with a laser on it. And the way that the laser works is it allows you to see where the top of the canopy is. It's really cool. And I want to take that to the golf course. So, okay, yeah, I want to go hit some golf balls, maybe work on keeping my handicap up, but also maybe take some pictures of that device on zoysia putting greens. So I'm thinking of doing that.
Very good. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that on my Instagram, but that's a. I think I'll do a blog post or maybe a update on Pace Turf about that.
There you go. Yeah, that's cool. We just basically celebrated my birthday yesterday. Monday is going to be just my wife has, I think, math Olympiad after school. Stevie has soccer practice up in King of Prussia, which is about a mile away. So it's just going to be another day for me. It's not going to be anything special, but I'll be thinking of you.
Yeah, I'll think of you. Maybe I'll send you a message.
Yeah, of course.
When are
Of
you
course.
recording your next podcast? Is that on your
Tuesday.
birthday? Tuesday. Oh,
No,
okay.
Tuesday on the third. I have a really fun episode. I cannot wait to do that. I've been thinking about this episode for a long time. No, it's not Gil Hans, if anybody's wondering. But it's and I still haven't gotten anywhere with that. So again, I'm gonna put the shout out. If anybody has a contact with Gil Hans, please let him know that I want to do a podcast with him about the Grateful Dead. And I would love to know how he became a deadhead and how the Grateful Dead might influence him as a golf course architect. I have some really great questions I would love to ask him in that regard. So if you know Gil Hans, if you have a way to get in touch with him, you don't have to give me his number, but just put it in his ear. Hey, there's this weirdo podcaster greenkeeper named Joe Gulotti that wants to do an episode with you about the Grateful Dead. So if you could just put it in his ear and tell him to go to his inbox on his work site, there's a couple emails for him explaining what I want to do.
That would be good. Maybe you can talk to Quinn Thompson about that. He knows the playlist pretty well.
He does. What? No, Nelly Thompson. I love his kid's name. I can't believe he named his kid Nelly. That's such a good name.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is a good one. Did you see his where he sang the song to Nelly about what the Kia Kid or whatever? It was like I don't know. Dude, it was so good. It was so good. He's awesome.
Yeah. Quinn is a smart fellow.
He's one of a kind.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. I would love to get Quinn back on as well. But no, I'm really excited for this episode on Tuesday. It's with a good friend of mine in the turfgrass business. And we're going to talk some turf, but we're going to talk I'll give a little hint. We're going to talk some how to improve the PGA Tour. We're going to talk about just some things that the PGA Tour could do to make it more interesting.
Maybe bring Anthony Kim back.
I know. I mean, that's great. That'll get some people interested. But mine are more. Okay, so let me give one example. I'll give one example. All right, of what I'm going to bring up, and I don't know if everybody is going to listen to this one. So here's one of my things to make the PGA Tour more interesting. All right, Micah. So just say you and I are playing in a PGA Tour event, and I tee one up and I blast it OB. And right now, that means that stroke and distance is basically a 2-stroke penalty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to re-tee it, and that's my third shot off the tee, right? Like I re-tee it. If I hit one OB, I put a peg in the ground, I put another Pro V1 on that peg, and I drive it again, and I'm on the fairway hitting 4 into the green. That would be basically it if it's a par 4, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so here's where it's a little different. In that situation, I blast one out of bounds. Okay, I have the option of just teeing it up and playing it, but I can take my ball and put it on the ground, and I can use the same club that I just used to blast it out of bounds with, but with no penalty, and I have to hit a driver off the deck. Do you understand what I mean?
So now you're hitting 2 off the tee?
No. There's no penalty, but you take your ball and you have to hit driver off the deck and play it as it lies with hitting driver off the deck. So that's your penalty for hitting it at bounds. But you can take a mulligan, but you can't use a tee. You got to hit it off the deck.
Okay. Well, that would be interesting.
Totally would be interesting. I mean, okay, Roy, remember when Rory pumped one out of bounds on number 10 at Augusta?
Well,
He
I
would
don't
just
know if
melt it.
I don't know that he pumped that.
But he blasted one
pulled,
way,
pull
pulled
hooked it.
one,
Yeah.
yeah, pull hooked with it out of bounds. I forget what year, but wouldn't it have been cool if he could have just been like, just taken a ball out of his pocket and put it on the ground and tried to hit it off the deck?
Yeah, but
And then like,
that's not that difficult. Like, I imagine they only lose 30 yards or something.
yeah, but he could pump another one out of bounds. And if you pump another one out of bounds, guess what? That's maybe it's like you're laying 8. It's just like, I
Yeah,
don't know. That's just one
I
of my harebrained
well,
schemes.
you can do that, but then you're not playing golf anymore. So the thing about golf is by playing by the rules. And
Well, I'm saying the rules are kind of fucking beat, and they need to change them to make it more interesting. That's what
you
I'm saying.
should,
That's
yeah,
what
you
the
should.
whole episode is going to be about.
Well,
It's just going to be like,
you should talk to Lou Stagner again and talk about free drops from divots.
oh, I know. That's another. I mean,
He
hey,
seems to be all over that. I don't quite get it. I thought it's just like play the ball as it lies. It's like, why would you even
yeah,
question that? And I didn't realize that there's so many people out there that want free drops from divots. I'm like, to me that doesn't seem like golf, but I guess I don't keep up
yeah.
with
People. I mean,
people.
I don't know. I mean, listen, I've been playing golf long enough to realize if you get in a divot, you're just going to have to hit it out of it. But if they change the rule to where you can if you can get relief from a divot, I'm all for it. Awesome, thank you. I'll take it. But no, I have some other like crazy ideas. Um,
Well, I look
that was just one. So like, but I have a laundry list of things that they could
well.
do to kind
Let's
of make the
good.
game more interesting.
So don't share them all here, and I'll
I
be sure
won't.
to
I
listen
won't.
to that episode. All right, Joe. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining me
Micah.
on the ATC double cut today.
I appreciate you having me, Micah. And next year, I can't wait to rejoin you. Or maybe, hey, anytime if you want to have me anytime, I'm available anytime to come on the double cut with you, Micah. So thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Joe. And I'm sure that you will be back. In the meantime, I will sign off now for ATC from Trong, Thailand. I'm Micah Woods. Bye bye.